Hey, y'all. My name is Steve Procopi. I write for Ain't It Cool News. I've known Darren for a few years. I have many fond memories of doing stuff with him over the years, both here in Chicago, and then I was also on the Mother's Day set in Canada. But I think the most important thing that we did together was, or the thing that you arranged that I will always thank you for, is that you put me in a room with Paris Hilton once at Comic-Con. And I did a lovely one-on-one interview with her that I highly recommend you read. And I did it. No, I mean, it was a respectful, wonderful interview. But I also realized that I'm like, I'm in a room with Paris Hilton.
Yeah, it's
talking
so weird.
to her.
I was actually during the screening of this, I was out having a beer with Mr. Brad Miska. We were actually friends. We were talking about Paris Hilton, which is weird because it's surreal to think some of the people that I've had a chance to work with. I mean, Paris Hilton is just a weird thing. But yeah, you got to meet Paris Hilton.
That's right. So thank you for that. Yeah. So let's just start from the beginning here, because this has a really fun
I got to tell
story.
you, I'm going to tell them the story
yeah.
that I told. If you read Paris Hilton's arrest report, she lists me as the reason why she was arrested, which is it's like in Us Weekly or something. And when she was arrested, eventually went to jail. Her reason when she was pulled over from the cops was the director, Darren Lynn Bouseman of Saw 2, 3, and 4, so it sounded like my bio, as pointed out, called me to come interview, so I had to go watch his movie. So she said that to the officer when she was arrested. So.
There was this one arrest, right? No, yeah, I remember the first one. Let's just start from the beginning, because this story has like a sort of a long history with you. Just sort of walk us through the timeline, the story idea, where you got it from, then how it originally was the comic books and graphic novel, and then turning it into this.
We started. This is one of those movies that crushes you as a filmmaker and artist, and I think that it's one of those things that you look back on it doesn't even seem real, but it started 6 years ago, where we made a bunch of graphic novels called Abattoir, and it was kind of a precursor to this story. And at that time, we said we're going to make a movie, and we started the pre-production. And the movie was shut down a total of 4 times, but in the 4 times, we're talking spanning years, and deaths, heart attacks, actors leaving and coming. And it's one of these things that it's a demoralizing process, because you realize, I always thought that after you make a few movies, I think this is my 13th film, you think it gets easier, and it doesn't get easier. In some respects, it gets harder and more cumbersome, but on this one, I remember I was on set, and we were 4 days away from filming, or 3 days away from filming. It was a Friday. We started filming on Monday. Sets were there, costumes were there, and I think I've told the story, so I can tell it again now. I don't think it's revealing anything new, but Adrian Brody was originally attached when we did it 2013 or something, and we're sitting there, and we're at a bar, and we're drinking, and both of our phones ring at the same time. And I see Adrian picks up his phone and goes to one side, and my phone rings, and my agent says, "Where are you? You need to walk out wherever you are." And he goes, "They're shutting the production down." And I said, "What do you mean they're shutting the production down?" He's like, you have to come home. And as I drove back to the production office, I literally see our sets being taken down, torn down, and we were supposed to shoot on Monday. And I'd been in New Orleans 3.5 months. And I went back, and it's horrible, because you tell your friends, like, "Oh, I'm gonna go make this movie called Abattoir," and then you come back 3 months later, and they're like, "What happened to the movie?" And I'm like, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." And that happened once, and then we got called back a second time. This was a year later, and a year later we're called back a second time, and I'm there 9 days, and we're shut down again. The first time, I forgot to mention that in between the time that we got shut down, our first AD had a heart attack and died. And so that happened. So we're called back a second time. And the second time we're called back, the investor, the guy that's financing the movie, was an equity guy, has a heart attack. And they sent us back. So now it's the second time. So now I tell everyone, after a year, I'm going back out. I'm turning down movies at this time. I'm like, I'm going back out to New Orleans. I'm going to make this thing. And my wife is like, "Are you sure this?" I was like, "It's going to happen." And I move all my shit out there. 9 days later, I'm back on a flight again. The second time, which is a heart attack. And then we go out a third time, and it's 1 day. We literally get there, and the money didn't clear the bank. And the producer at this time, and by the way, the producer's a badass, Jesse Berger, because it's like imagining being kicked in the balls over and over and over again, and you're just like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do it again." He stands back up, And on the fourth, I think it was the fourth time, he finally got it to happen. And I think it's a lesson, and I think why I've been successful in my career, that I've been able to make movies, is it's a thing about just getting back up. Like, you fail 99.9% of the time, but if you just get that one time, that 1% chance, and that's eventually happened, is, you get knocked down 99 times, that 100th time you get to actually make a movie. So finally, on this one, we got to finally make the movie.
So, and you have a lot of your films leading up to this one seem like, when you say them out loud what they're about, they seem like they are impossible films to get made. So it's weird that this, you're going from you're borrowing from everything from like Dante's Inferno to the Haunted Mansion at Disney World. It's like, this seems like a killer idea that should be really easy to get made, and this was the one you had all the trouble with. Well, that's really bizarre.
I think that one of my favorite things about myself as a filmmaker and artist is that I always look for the what the fuck factor, where people that are watching my career are like, what the fuck, is he crazy? Like, he just did 3 Saw films, he's gonna make a movie with Paris Hilton, what the fuck? I kind of always want to do that, and to me, I wanted to make a haunted house movie, but how do you even compete with James Wan when he's turning out Insidious and Conjuring? These movies are beautiful movies. I mean, they're amazing. How do you compete with this? And so, knowing that we had such a small budget to work with on this, we shot the movie in 16 days or something like that, 17 days. Because every time that we went back, the money never came back. So we were given X amount of money. We basically figured out what the foreign value of the film was, and that's what it was. But every time that we were shut down, that money still had to be repaid. So the budget kept dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. So we started with like a 28-day shoot, and then it became the second time it was a 22-day shoot, the third time it was an 18-day shoot, and finally it was like a 16-day shoot. And at that point, how do you compete with some of these amazing films that are out there? I wanted to go weird, I wanted to go crazy, and I said, I know people don't talk like this. I mean, that's one of the hardest things I think with a movie like this, is that I wanted to make it stylized, I wanted to make it different than everyone else out there. And this is a talking heads movie. It's not an action movie. There's not really ghosts in it. The ghosts are in it for like 42 seconds. At that time I was watching, I think I was smoking a lot of pot and watching Humphrey Bogart, and I was like, this guy's cool. And I wanted to make a movie that, like, if Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall made a movie now and it was a horror film, what would it look like? And so that was kind of my idea. So that did become harder because it wasn't a commercial movie. It wasn't jump scares and ghosts every 5 seconds and blood and guts. There's not really much blood in it. There's not many ghosts in it. So trying to convince a producer, I want to make an arty-farty film noir movie where they're saying weird shit. And luckily, again, Jesse Berger and the producers to the credit backed me on it, and we made it.
So take it back though to the very beginning. Was it originally conceived as a film and then you turned it into the graphic novel, or was it always conceived as a written thing first?
I've got this new thing that I'm trying to do with anything that I work on, and it started with Repo and then The Devil's Carnival and now this, that I want to try to make cross-platform immersive kind of content where I want to try to not break the distribution model, but do something different with it. So the original concept with this was that we were going to do a graphic novel, a TV series, and a movie at the same time. And they were all going to tell different parts of the same story. And so I came in with this huge Bible, and I went into Radical Studios with this huge Bible, and I said, here's this crazy idea that I want to make. And Barry Levine said, that's too complicated, it hurts my head. Why don't we start it as a graphic novel or a series, and then we'll turn it into a movie. It was originally conceived of as a trilogy. The second one's already been written and is in pre-production now. And it's crazy is that there's also a Chinese version of the movie which is completely different. So at the same time this was made, I was hired to write a version for China because ghosts, they don't allow ghosts in China. You can't make movies with ghosts in them. And so China had us make another version of the movie. So there's a whole other story that's being done now which complements this story, has Jebediah Crone in it, but is not this story, not at all. So the idea was a cross, like different versions of the same world, that if you watch if you read the comic book, or you see the Chinese version, or you watch this, they all further complement each other, but they're all unique individual stories.
I was gonna say, this isn't the comic book. This is like after the comic book.
Yeah, the comic book took place before this.
Right. So, let's just talk about, I mean, you've got a few people here we recognize from other, Jessica being the key person. that you've worked with before, do you just find it, you've got enough things going against you as a director of a small budget, horror film, that you just surround yourself with people that you know and love, or the people that you don't know, you just get along with great when you first meet them. So does that just make your job that a little bit easier then?
I work with people that I like and I think like me, because I mean, here's the thing: is if you're gonna make a movie and you're gonna be in the trenches with someone for a long period of time, you gotta be able to have a chemistry with them and get along with them. And I found a group of people that I like working with and like working with me, and so I continue to ask them back. If you look at some of my actors, they've been in everything I've done. Like if you look at Jay LaRose, who was in the Saw films, who was in Repo, who was in Devil's Carnivals, now in this. Alexa Vega I've worked with 5 times. Like there's all these people that I've worked with, Jessica Lowndes multiple times. Dayton Callis, this is my 5th time working with him. So I think, you're fighting an uphill battle to get anything made. I think that I want to surround myself with things that make me comfortable and make it fun. I think that's what it is. Making movies should be fun. So I want to work with people I like.
How many of those rooms did you actually build? Because, it looks like dozens, but I don't know how many it actually is.
Jen Spence was the production designer, who's incredible. She did the Paranormal Activity, Insidious. I don't know how she did it. I mean, she literally had $1 and like 4 nails. And I think we shot it in New Orleans, and so we took over a lot of buildings that had not been updated since Katrina.
Right.
And it was funny because some of the things we didn't have to even touch, they just looked like that. One of my favorites was we took over an abandoned church where it was like the base of our operation, and it seemed like something out of a nightmare or something you'd see in Mimic, but you literally, there was no electricity, and you'd walk up with a flashlight, no matter where you pointed the flashlight, hundreds of cockroaches would just skitter away, and it was because the moisture from Katrina had just killed the wood, and no one had gone in there and did anything. So a lot of it was just we found it, and then Jen Spence went in and worked her magic on everything else. But there was, and it sucks because in the original script, the first version of it, the Abattoir was from page 1 all the way to the end. And as every time we came back, we lost the ability to do that because it's the most expensive part. The Abattoir is the most expensive part of it. So it kept dwindling down and down and down. And I think at the very end, there's like 14 rooms that they walk through.
I'm sure the smell will smell like roses. Well, let's see. We got a few minutes for questions if you guys have any. Yeah. Go ahead.
The character of Grady seems very reminiscent of the character of David Mills from the film Seven. And was that an influence at all in creating the character?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love Seven. How can you not love that movie? And like that, there's a moment in there where I literally said, be Brad Pitt in Seven, when he's like, what the fuck is that noise? Like that was me saying be Brad Pitt in Seven. That was me not being original, saying literally copy Brad Pitt in Seven. No, it is. I mean, Seven is a modern noir. I mean, they walk around with fedoras and top hats and talk weird and whatever, and I love that. So I think if you're gonna borrow from the best. So yeah, it was.
Excellent. Anyone else? It's sort of hard to see all the way in the back. Okay, yeah.
I want to give you a lot of credit for crossing genres in this movie. It has a great look. It reminded me of the 40s and 50s,
Right.
The way the style was on it. I want to give you a lot of credit. And it's much different than what you've done. It has songs and everything.
Thank you. It was actually funny. This was a compromise. I always wish that people could see the first script, because there's always 3 movies when you make them. There's the movie that you set out to make, the movie that you shoot, and the movie that becomes an editing. And if you go back to the actual script, the first version of the script, it's entirely Bogart. Everything about it is 40s. Like everything they say is like, give it a scope, say, like everything. We cut it out because we're like, audiences will go so far, and then they're just gonna say, dude, you're a fuckwad, stop that. So we cut a lot of it out. But there are versions where it literally, it's one step away from having the word press above like their things. I also love Dick Tracy. Like when you go back and watch Dick Tracy, just how big of characters everything are, and I love that. And so to me, I wanted to make an adult fairy tale, like a fantastical thing. Like nothing about this is real. And so I think if I was going to do that, I wanted to again borrow from my favorite era. And it's funny, when we did the early test screenings with it, maybe I'm just. We had a lot of people saying, wait a minute, I'm confused. They have cell phones, but isn't it in the 40s? And I'm like, no, they do have cell phones and flat screen TVs, and they drive cars that are modern. Like, no, it's not. But if you go to my house, everything in my house is in the 40s. Like my entire office is typewriters and weird Edison bulbs and stuff like that. I just love that era. So thank you for liking that.
Yeah, right there.
I also want to say, I think the sound design was awesome too. That really enhanced the movie.
Especially at the end,
Right.
yeah. The soundscape, that whole like last
Oh, yeah,
in the
sound-
Abattoir is amazing.
A lot of
Yeah.
people don't give credit to sound, and it's really an important part.
I was mentioning during the middle of the movie, which is a crazy, again, these things that you don't see that happen behind the scenes on, specifically smaller movies. But, so I'm going to give credit to our composer, Mark Seyfried, a guy in London. I wasn't familiar with his work, and someone sent me a CD, and I loved it. And he was a sound designer, and then he became a composer. But, so when we first did the movie, we finished it a year and a half ago. And we listened to the score, and the score originally was just trumpets. It was literally trumpets and saxophones, and it was complete noir. And the producers were like, no, we're redoing this. This is after the guy spent 7.5 weeks on the score. And he started over from literally square one and gave us a completely different score. And then we took the movie back to LA and remixed the entire movie. So we had like a movie, and then we watched it, and we're like, and then we redid it again. So the composer literally went back in and redid every single audio thing in here, which is what we have now. And I think the guy's a badass.
All right, a couple more. Wait, turn that on. Yeah.
Way in the back.
If
In the
there's
back.
somebody in the back, go for it. I can't see you.
Was Wicker Man an influence?
Yeah, it's awesome you guys are picking this up. Yeah, absolutely. Nicolas Cage is my, not that Wicker Man, you mean the original. It was, I mean, you know what I loved about Wicker Man? It was one of those, first off, I love cult influences, and I love towns that harbor deep secrets. And again, something that if the director's edition 42 disc comes out, there's a lot more, you'll see a lot more Wicker Man shit in it. The townsfolk in the original version have a much, much bigger role. And there's literally major homages to the original Wicker Man that just got cut out for time's sake. All my movies run long. So like I remember when I did Mother's Day, the first edit was 4.5 hours or 5 hours. I don't remember now, it was ridiculous. And we cut it down to be what it is. This movie was like 19 hours, and we had to literally cut out. So the first thing that went was all the weird noir dialogue that was too campy, and then we cut out the townsfolk. But the townsfolk had tons of just weird shit. That was absolutely Wicker Man. So when we started, I made the cinematographer and the costume designer, everyone sit down and watch. That was one of the movies that we did was Wicker Man. So thank you for pointing that out.
All right, any last one? I don't think this is working.
I can't see anything anyway.
Yeah.
So all right.
If not, that's cool.
Yeah, it happens.
All right, Darren, thank you so much for coming out and bringing the movie.
Yes,
Slate
thank you.
here. It's awesome.
Thank you guys so much for